Thanks there to Barry Moore giving the political reaction, at least the Trump supporting political reaction. We're going to get now a bit more on the legal reaction. We can speak to Ronald Chapman II, a federal defence attorney and author of Fight the Feds, Unravelling Federal Criminal Investigations. Thanks very much for coming on the programme.
Thank you.
So can we start just really simply, I suppose, by telling us where we are with the legal proceedings right now? What's happened and what's going to happen next week?
Well, right now, a grand jury has voted to indict Donald Trump. The indictment is currently sealed, and it will be unsealed likely when he's arraigned at some point next week. The grand jury vote essentially means that roughly half of the grand jury members or more determine that Donald Trump should be indicted for a range of felony offenses. I think we've heard reports that there are 30 or 34 charges in this case. He will go and visit in front of a judge next week and plead guilty or not guilty. Likely it would be not guilty to these charges, and the case would be set for trial.
Interesting. And then we've been hearing this phrase, the perp walk, about his appearance next week. Just talk us through what that means and what it involves.
Well, it's a classic American tradition where when somebody has to be arraigned, they are initially fingerprinted and photographed for identification purposes, and then they are walked all the way over to the courthouse in order to stand before a judge for arraignment. Obviously, that's been a very opportunistic moment for photographers to grab a picture. Bernie Madoff and others who've been involved in the legal system had to go through that process, and likely Donald Trump will as well. I believe the perp walk in this case will happen inside of the courthouse, so it may not be as public, but he will have to undergo that process.
Right. And when that's through, then we finally hear from the judge what the details are, what the legal details are about what charges there are. I know clearly we don't know them because we won't until next week, but what's your best guess information about what they will revolve around?
Well, my best guess is that he's being accused of fraudulently altering business documents to cover up several hush money payments. Now, hush money payments aren't illegal inherently, but when you make it look as if it was a business expense to avoid the IRS having to tax the funds, then that can actually be a felony if it's used to cover up other criminal activity. And a felony in the United States is punishable by more than 1 year in jail, which Donald Trump could potentially be facing. The interesting thing about this case, though, and the reports that we've heard, is that there are 30 charges. And obviously, we only have, I believe, 3 hush money payments. So it appears that the grand jury has indicted on other offenses, potentially obstruction of justice for his involvement in the investigation or his statements that he made, and maybe other tax-related offenses that they've investigated.
And one of the big questions in the search engines today, people asking, the simple question is he going to jail? Now, I know clearly it's way too early. We're getting way ahead of ourselves, and the fact that he denies any wrongdoing. But what do you think the chances of that are?
My guess is that Donald Trump is unlikely to spend a day in jail. I believe the counts that he may be charged with are either 4 or 5 year felony offenses, meaning that is the maximum that the worst potential offender could spend in jail for those offenses. Typically, people with those low-level felonies would receive a probation-type sentence, a fine, and given that the conduct isn't particularly egregious in this case, I don't believe that he would see the inside of a jail cell at all.
Okay, fascinating stuff. Ronald Chapman II, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.